Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 103 of the Dynasty Junkies podcast, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I am your host tonight, Rocky Petrella at Dynasty FF Addict, here with Scott Sidlow tonight. And Scott, I'm pretty excited about this one. We're going to talk some startup strategy, some startup trading, things like that. And we put out an open invite to our currently going on Dynasty Junkies 2 startup. We got 4 other people from the league in the chat. Should be a fun one.
Yeah, these are always fun. I mean, when we get just the collective minds on here and all the different viewpoints and everything going on. Plus, it's just fun to talk about a startup it's currently in progress. So, who knows? What can we influence going forward? How can we keep the Bobby and Andrew dynamic, lighting that fire? You know what I mean?
Yeah, we got multiple co-managers in that league. We may talk about that a little bit as well. But let's intro the 4 other guys we have on here. I know some of them are going to have to leave early, but first we got Josh from Fantasy Timeline. Josh Valentin. Josh, how you doing?
Good, man. Happy to be on. Happy to cut it up with you guys. It's going to be fun talking about our draft and what's going on with you and Scott's love of the Atlanta quarterback situation.
And I normally we wait till the end to kind of let you guys plug everything. I'm gonna go to Mercer here. Justin Mercer. He's got a pretty recent podcast now. I want to let him plug it because I know he's got to cut out early tonight because he's recording it pretty soon.
I'm actually recording episode 5 of Coast to Coast Dynasty tonight. So myself and at Superflex DGen Ruben co-host that. We talk a lot about dynasty strategy, trades that we do because we're in a lot of leagues, and then we have our signature Coast to Coast roast where we basically take a bad behavior in the dynasty world and we roast it. We try not to get specific, but I think that's going to be a lot of fun as we continue to put out more roasts.
Okay, so Drew. We also have Drew, not a doctor. Drew, I always worry I'm going to butcher your last name. Prawel?
You got it. First shot.
Okay.
Nicely done.
Also a Fantasy Timeline. He also may cut out on this because I know his iPad's getting low. But Drew, thanks for coming on tonight. How you doing?
Absolutely. I'm great. It's a nice break from lifting boxes all day. So happy to be here.
Yeah, and like I said, we sent an open invite to the league. The only non-podcaster that came on here, our guy Jesse Schott, who's actually also the guy who sent in tonight's Find Me a Trade. I believe he's coming in from work, so he also may not make it through the show. But Jesse, how you doing?
Doing good. Yeah, I won't be here too long, but just wanted to say hi, and really excited to be a part of this whole thing.
So yeah, so we'll get right into it because, like I said, some of these people are definitely going to have to leave early. So I wanted to get into kind of everyone's sort of general startup strategy. Did it change in this particular startup? Because we are going to get into, we're going to talk some specifics with the Junkies 2 startup, which has been a lot of fun. We've had 17 trades so far. I believe we're in the 11th round. Is it the 11th or 12th round now?
11.
12.
12. We just
12.
crossed
Okay.
over to 12.
We did get into 12. First trade of the whole thing was between us and me and Scott are co-managing a team. It was between us and Mercer. He did trade up to the 102. I think I did pull that up before the show.
I wish I was him.
Yeah. Yes, I drew the 103, so I grabbed the 102 and 103. So I had,
so we traded him the 102, 702, and 1302 for 212, 303, and 503. So, are you normally a trade up elite quarterback to elite quarterback guy?
So here's what I will say. I was in my first 14-team league, and I punted quarterback, and I never regretted something more in my entire life. And so I was like, this is a 14-team league. I am getting 2 elite quarterbacks right out of the gate and not ever having to worry about it. So that is why I did the trade up there. And, I'm pretty happy having Pat Mahomes and Justin Herbert to anchor my team. So.
And how does it hurt how you feel about the rest of your team so far? Are you still
pretty happy? So I obviously I went light on wide receivers. I need to get some wide receivers on my team. We had one of the managers drafted quarterback and Pitt. I think he got Pitts, Tua, and then nothing but wide receivers. So every wide receiver I was targeting, he took, and I'm like, damn it. I'm like, I'll go another way. But yeah, so it's shaping up okay.
Yeah, and I've mentioned this before. I think everyone kind of knows my quarterback strategy is generally to fade the early guys. And in 14 team, I'm not as set on that, but I just liked your offer too much, and somehow I got Scott on board with trading back, almost 2 full rounds from the 102, pretty much. Scott, why were you willing to do that?
Well, I guess, when you're talking about 14 team league, knowing that we could have like 7 or 8 of the top 50 players, I just felt like that was too good of an advantage. And so I felt like we could make it up later with QB. Although we really didn't, because, we took some terrible quarterbacks, but what are you going to do? I mean,
well, and that's also why I did the 5th. I did the 2nd, 3rd, and the 5th, because I was like, I got to make this appetizing. And, if I would have been in your shoes, I would have probably done it.
Well, and the back-to-back is what really, being able to go, okay, not only do we have 2 of 4, but now we have a 3rd. So we'd have like 3 of 5 in 3 rounds. And to have, 3 out of 5, then we could really kind of dictate some things as far as going like, okay, let's take a couple. We took like Javonte Williams and Breece Hall like back to back there. And it was kind of like, that's not typically something I would do. But when you're in that position, now you're like, okay, I'm going to take those guys and let other people fight over whoever's left at running back there. And then we'll be able to hopefully push some other value down the board. So I think it worked out. I think our team has a lot of points. Like there's going to be points in the lineup, but I definitely like having Herbert and Mahomes better. So for the long run, right?
And we're not super old either. We're
no.
But yeah, that was generally my thinking too when he sent the trade over. Is I generally like to trade back in startups anyway, just because I like to have a lot of, like you said, I think we had 7 of the top 50. That's what I want to try and do. I want to try and get as much top 50, 60 picks as possible, even if it means passing on the elite quarterbacks, which is what I generally tend to do. Again, in 14 team, not necessarily as big a thing for me, but as long as we have 3, and we do have at least 3, I'm happy with that. So 2.5 maybe, but we ended up with of course my boy Cousins, which was the most, I think everyone
by the way,
it was the most predictable pick of the draft.
Did we get him at like QB like what?
Oh, it was
21?
It was 18, 19, something like that.
QB 19. So I'll take that value.
I know a bunch of listeners to this show, and they all let me still have Cousins. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
but
it was too early for us to take him.
Yeah, we were being nice to you. We figured you deserved him.
He should outperform. He should outperform that though. QB 19. He should. With the new system,
for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
So I'm good with that. And
Justin Jefferson says it's going to be a pass first offense.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I don't know if you guys know Matt Stafford or Joe Burrow at all, but
But Josh, Drew, what about your strategy going in? Did anything change at all as you got into the draft here?
Well, it's funny because the trade that you guys talked about actually influenced us, because Drew said to me, hey, you want to try to get the 101? And I saw that trade come through, and I was like, dude, that's way too much. Yeah, like, and the price has been set, so now I can't go to whoever had the 101 and be like, hey, can I give you slightly less than the 102 was just traded for? I know it makes no sense for you, but would you mind? So at that point, I was like,
thanks a lot, Mercer.
Yeah, I'm sorry to ruin your Bills fandom. I know you would have taken Josh Allen there.
I'm not a Bills fan. I still would have loved to have had Josh Allen. So
yeah,
there ain't nothing wrong with that. But it's funny. I don't have strategies going into startups, especially when you're talking about a 14-team super flex with 2-point tight end premium. There are just so many variables in that you kind of have to be fluid. Like you have to, you might be able to predict your first 2 or 3 picks, but I'll be honest with you, I did not expect quarterback to go. I mean, I knew it was going to go, but man, like you said, we had, by the time we were back up in the second round, I think like 12 quarterbacks were gone and we were picked 18. So it was just like, okay. And we were at a spot, kind of like you said, we let you get Kirk Cousins and we talked about Cousins. And I was like, dude, but at pick 18, like that can't be the play. I love Kirk Cousins. And, Rocky and I, it's one of the things we actually agree on. But, it was like, Aaron Rodgers? I didn't even like Aaron Rodgers at pick 18. So it was kind of like, all right, let's reverse course. We're not taking quarterback in the first. We're not taking quarterback in the second. And then we got probably Rocky's favorite quarterback because he's as old as Rocky is, Tom Brady. That was
live
fun.
on your show. Live on
the show. Yeah, that was
did.
That was a good time. And then we traded back into the third, and I said this in the chat. We made that trade with no player in mind because someone said, "Oh, you traded back in to get Tannehill." I was like, "No, we traded back in to get a pick." And after kind of talking it through, and that's bad process. I get that. You should kind of have a target in mind, but Drew and I were like, "Hey, like there's some value because those first like 3 or 4 trades, it was just like, whoa, big money's being spent, and I don't want to be in on that." And then kind of as we started getting to the end of the second, beginning of the third, and those trades were going down, it was like, all right, the price is becoming a little bit more manageable here. Let's try to get one of these top 50 picks and do something with it. And I'm kind of glad we did now get Tannehill because we're still sitting on 2 quarterbacks, and the quarterback pool in the 12th round is what we would say not good in the business. So yeah, but strategy is always, I mean, in my opinion, is always got to be kind of fluid. See what's there, see where the value's at, see what people are missing on, and kind of try to pick that up.
Yeah, so Kirk Cousins was QB 18, and he went at the 27th overall pick.
I was just looking at that. I was going to mention
18 quarterbacks in the first
27. Yep.
Yeah.
And that was our first
picks.
pick overall was Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
At 213.
Yeah.
But I guess I'll throw that question to you as well, Jesse. Did you have a strategy going in, and did anything change at all as the draft unfolded?
As soon as that quarterback run kind of hit, I had no idea what to do. To be honest. It got back to me in the second round, and I don't remember exactly how many quarterbacks were gone, but it was just an insane amount. Like, luckily, I got Dak in the first at like a normal spot to get Dak. So I didn't, I think like 10. I think I'm the 8th in the 8th.
Yeah, 108.
Yep. Yeah, 108. And when it got back to me, so many quarterbacks were off. The value for everybody else was insane, and I just kind of was like, I gotta kind of, I know quarterback is super flex, and I gotta go hard on quarterback, but tight end 2.0 tight end premium, the top 2 tight ends were already gone. I was thinking another tight end run would happen soon, so I grabbed Kittle fast, and that was about where I said, you know what, I'm gonna just kind of do everything I possibly can to win this year. And I've sold off almost all of my 23 capital at this point to try and win. And instead of going hard at the top 50 picks like a lot of guys were, because those were kind of pricey, I was trying to go for like having a healthy team all the way down, because it's start 11. So I know for start 11, those bottom 3 guys are usually guys you don't feel comfortable starting. So I was trying to make it so that those bottom 2 or 3 guys that I'm starting, I felt really good about starting, and that's kind of how I've been trying to approach it.
Yeah, and I was just looking at your team. It is definitely a pretty good win now team. Those quarterbacks are a little rough after Dak. You have Baker and Daniel Jones, but that's not much worse than what me and Scott have. So
yeah.
And then he's got Fournette, Gibson, Sanders. I got Amari, Godwin, DJ Moore, Debo, Adam Thielen at wide receiver, and Kittle and Ingram at tight end. So he's got 13 guys there, all of which are probably startable. So not too bad. Another thing I wanted to get into was kind of startup trading and what your guys' general strategy is on there. What about you, Drew? We haven't heard from you too much. Do you like to move around in startups? Do you like to move up? Do you like to move down? How do you kind of gauge value for startup trades? What can you tell me?
I think ideally I try to have eat my cake or have my cake and eat it too. Try to get that mix of win now with a little bit of youth and upside, and hope you hit kind of in the middle rounds. But for a 14 team, I'm not moving around too much unless the value is coming to me. So I would be more inclined to trade back than try to move up, because I think if within the first 3-4 weeks we should know kind of where we stand and what the trajectory looks like. So if we need to back off and sell a couple older guys to be able to make some room for new youth in 23, then we're good with that. We talked through, honestly, after the first round, I think Josh and I discussed, do we just want to, punt this year and try to accumulate some 23 value? Because we went back and forth on Andrews or Russ Wilson at the end of the first there, after seeing all those quarterbacks go. And I pushed Josh into taking the 2-point tight end premium into account and going for Andrews, who I think we both feel like is the best tight end in the NFL right now. I think that probably backfired a bit when we came back in the second round and looking at what was left. So typically, I would prefer to move back, probably my 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds. If somebody wants to jump up and feel like they've got somebody that's falling there, I'm willing to move back. But I'm not typically the guy that's going to move up a lot. I'd rather kind of maintain or add some value or add some assets along the way if I can.
Yeah, and I've already mentioned what I'd like to do. I want to throw it to Mercer again too. I know you traded up for the 102. Is that something? I don't know if you ever specifically answered that earlier. Is that something you normally will do? Is try and trade up, or was this just a 14 team where I want 2 elite quarterbacks?
No, my philosophy is trade early and often. As soon as like the draft order is set, I'm kind of like trying to make my moves as far as before you even said it in NFL, I was DMing you, Rocky.
The draft order, I don't think
we didn't even know if it was a 3rd round reversal or not. And I was like, all right, well, if it's a 3rd round reversal, then here are the picks. And
we had the draft order done in the chat, I think, but we didn't actually have it officially set up on MFL, and Mercer's already sending me an offer. Yeah. In DMs.
I love to trade. I'm doing second home league Dynasty the end of this month, and we're doing the 100-yard rush live tomorrow night. So we're gonna Zoom and watch our 100-yard rush. We're gonna set the order and start trading on the 3 weeks before the draft starts, right? Because that's what I like to do. And then for my 3rd and 4th pick, after I got those 2 quarterbacks, I knew I was gonna draft a tight end. Right? I was going to go 2 quarterbacks, tight end. That was the plan from the get-go with the 2.0 premium. But Saquon was there too. And I'm a big Saquon fan. And I'm like, I want them both. So I worked out and I traded up again so that I had the 411 and the 412. And then I was able to get Waller and Saquon after the quarterback start. So I would say if there's a specific target, I'm going to do what I can to try and trade up. And then once it gets to this point where we're at, I just trade more to trade. Like I
just
said,
trade,
it's
very, very Russ-like.
There's a player I have in mind that I want to grab. I'm like, all right, well, I feel like this is the end of a tier. It's, the 140th player or whatever we're at now. And, it's fun. That's what I get at and enjoy about Dynasty is the trading aspect of it.
Yeah, and Sidlow, I wanted to get your take on this too. You've definitely, we've made a few moves. Even after that trading down that 102, you've been kind of wanting to trade down, I think, a lot of our picks. So what's your general thoughts on startup trading?
Yeah, people are so willing to just throw away future picks, because it's like, oh, well, I'm going to get this guy right now, so I don't really care about a 23 3rd or 4th or whatever, and that's fine. I mean, there's not a ton of value in that, but when I have 48 guys in the same tier, and I'm like, yeah, I really don't care which one of these, it actually makes it easier to trade back because now I get a future asset, and I also don't have to think or choose. Like, they just choose for me. They take all the players, and then I take who's left. So, I mean, it's, in some ways it's the easy way out, but at the end of the day, like, if you have that many players in the same tier, and when you get in these middle rounds, that's typically the case. You're kind of just moving around for who you like. So if you really like a player, you're absolutely willing to give up a 23 fourth, right? So if I have 3 players that are all the same and I don't care which one I get, then I'm absolutely willing to take a 23 fourth. So it seems to make the most sense to move around in these tiers. And this is generally where I do the most trading, is kind of in these middle rounds, because again, if they're all similar, then it's fine with me. Now, if I have a specific strategy, or I'm trying to get certain players, or trying to balance my portfolio, or whatever it may be, like, sometimes I'm the one trading up. But in this case, I don't see a scenario in which, like, we're not going to be going for it necessarily this year. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see with our team how we would not be in win now mode. Not that we're like a contender necessarily. We don't really know in startups until things start playing out. But if we can get some flexibility with some additional future picks, that could make the difference, because again, it's, July, and we get into September, and maybe we lost a couple players for whatever reason. Now we've got those picks. We might be able to fill in here and there where we need, or like Jesse's point earlier, we have so many starters. And so if we feel really great about our core of starters, and we need to find those guys that, maybe one of these teams that's building more for the future has a guy who can give us a few weeks and get us to where we need to go, we can throw him a third or fourth for that player, right? Because he doesn't want the points. He wants the future picks. And so with the mindset of having, when you're in a startup, you're always going to have guys that are, once you get to this point in the draft, you look at your roster and you go, okay, I'm probably going to be competing this year, or at least leaning towards that win now mode. And then you have guys that are like, yeah, I don't want these vets, or I'm probably not taking them unless they seem like a crazy value, and I'll trade them later. And so those shifting mindsets, as they start to, move to the other ends of the spectrum, then you either have to take the guys you're going to end up with, like, long term, or you have to put yourself in a position to have the assets to trade to, ultimately win now, which is what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I remember too when we started out, to kind of to your point, like, I think I even said to you, like, it depends, we'll see what happens from here on out, and whether we become a win now team or not. Like, we weren't sure at the beginning. We were drafting we did draft Cousins, then we drafted, I think, a couple young running backs after that. So you have to see how the draft takes shape. And I'm with Josh. I'm always about being fluid, and I don't ever have a set strategy going in. But Josh, I wanted to ask you too, just about the startup trading aspect, and kind of, we haven't touched on this specifically really, but like, how you determine what is like a good value. Like for me, I have some rules of thumb. And I think I mentioned this on either this podcast or Trade Addicts or somewhere before, but I don't ever give up extra startup picks. It has to be an even swap, or basically it has to be an even swap. If I'm getting a pick in the deal, if I drop it 1 for 1, I'm fine with that. Or it has to be 2 for 2. And for me, or 3 for 3, whatever. But the move up later always has to be, for me, at least twice as much as the move down I'm doing. If I'm, like, say I'm doing a trade down, I have to get twice as big move up later as I'm getting the drop earlier, because those earlier picks are worth so much more. But do you have anything like that, and any other comments you want to make on startup trading?
So I think I do startup trading differently than a lot of other people, because if, kind of like when you were explaining the trade that you guys made for the 102, it's kind of like all of those things, they're just a bunch of numbers. It's the 102 and a 7th and a 13th. I don't remember, but it's all just a bunch of numbers. So what I try to do is, and obviously the earlier on in the draft, this is a lot harder to do because you don't know what people's teams look like. But I try to guesstimate who's going to get taken based on what the team looks like, what the drafting patterns are, whether this team is going all old or they going all youth and trying to tank it. Do they have the nice little mix there of both? And then I try to plug some names in there that would make sense. Obviously, listen, people are going to go off the rails sometimes. They're going to hit you with something you didn't expect. But at least if I can go, okay, this looks like it's going to be, Josh Allen and Brandon Cooks for, Kirk Cousins and Drake London. Do I like that? Do I not like that? What's going on? And you at least in my mind, the way my mind works, I can kind of put some actual value into it instead of just going,
put the names on the picks.
Yeah, it's just these picks because, like I said, when I saw the pick for the 102 go down, I kind of just instantly, just knowing ADP and just, because a lot of these guys I haven't drafted with before and I don't know, they didn't have no one had a team when the 102 was getting taken. So it was a little hard to say, all right, what's going to happen with the later picks? But so I kind of try to plug it in and go, okay. And I knew as soon as I saw that trade and Drew was asking about the 101, obviously, because I know he wanted Josh Allen. I was like, yeah, dude, this is going to be a little bit too much for
Mercer ruined it for everybody.
Yeah, I ruined it for no, Mercer didn't ruin it.
I got what I wanted, and I have the names of the players because I actually looked that up. I did some homework, even though I didn't have a show sheet. I was like, all right, wonder what that the players ended up being. So obviously the 102 was Pat Mahomes, right? And then Kenny Pickett was the 702, which was on my side. I have yet to select the 1302. So
I like that pick though.
Yeah, Pat Mahomes, Kenny Pickett, 1302, and you guys had Cooper Kupp, Breece Hall, and Jameis on your side.
Okay.
Those selections. So you got your quarterback, you got the 101 in this year's draft, and then you've got, arguably a top 3 wide receiver in Dynasty. He's older, but he's going to score a lot for the next 2 years.
So, I mean, it worked out for both of us, basically. Yeah. We both accomplished what we wanted to, and I mean, that's the point.
Yep. Yeah, and you got it. I would say that my 1302 is not going to be as good of a starter as you guys got 3 starting caliber players right there.
Right.
And I got 1.
Well, if Pickett ends up...
you could argue that Pat Mahomes is not going for that package, though. Would you trade Pat Mahomes for Cooper Kupp, Breece Hall, and Kirk Cousins?
I wouldn't trade him for anything, but that's just me.
That's what I'm saying.
but it was 102 at the time, and that number, it's
Josh easier to trade the number than the player.
Trade the number than the player.
Yeah.
In the chat here, FF Lefty says going pretty extreme productive struggle in a startup he's doing right now, currently through 6 rounds. Just seeing that comment made me want to throw that out there. Do you guys? I almost never ever go productive struggle, although I may bring up a startup
not anymore.
Doing a little bit of something like that. But is that something you guys ever do? I feel like it's something Drew would do because he loves picks, but but is that something?
I'll do it in a dispersal, kind of like what Big Bot's doing there. Yeah. But outside of that, in a true startup, no, I want to see, like Josh said, it's crazy stuff happens all throughout the draft. And I think somebody threw in our group, me, another startup that they were doing that was just wild. Some of the folks that were going. So I think that I always think I've got a shot. Oh, was it Jesse?
No. Sorry, all over this show. It was Steve.
Yeah. But yeah, so I always believe I've got a shot to steal some value in the startup and make it out better in the top half, at least for the first year.
Which, by the way, you guys mentioned Jesse. I just want, if anybody's listening, Jesse did have to cut out, so you won't hear from Jesse again. And I feel like I should mention too. We never said it at the top here, but the league that we've been talking about this whole show is a PPR Superflex 2.0 tight end premium, 14 team with 11 starters, and you have to start 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, tight end, quarterback, and then the super flex, and I think that makes it
Three
three flexes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to kind of put some context in everything we're talking about here,
Yeah.
people have mentioned some of the settings as we've been going along, but we never actually said that off the top. So now I forget what the hell we were talking about.
Well, no, the productive struggle. Like,
oh, that's what it was.
I was probably going to do that in this league if it would have ended up auction, because I've only done one auction in my life before, so I was inexperienced, and I was like, that's a good fallback. And what myself and my co-owner did in that league, because it was a 2014 2-copy startup. I'm like, let's get 2 quarterbacks and start buying 23 first.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And right now, I like where our team's at. We have 5 23 firsts. We are likely going to be the 101. We were the 101, and we traded 101 and 301 to Shane at that live meetup, Rocky, that we met in person.
That's right, yeah.
I traded 101, 301 for Trevor Lawrence. So now we have Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence, 5 23 firsts. And, I mean, that went well for the productive struggle. But, when it was 2 people splitting the buy-in, I was like, hey, we could productive struggle this for a couple years and donate and then try and build a powerhouse.
Yeah, good for
Yeah.
you.
It's funny. I could almost never bring myself to do a full-on productive struggle. I had a league earlier this year. I did. I believe it's also 14 team. It's on Sleeper, which is unfortunate, but
that's a struggle by itself.
Yes, exactly. But
an unproductive struggle, if you will.
But I traded down I don't think I made my first pick until the 4th round, and I picked up 5 23 first. And that was kind of the idea, was that I was going to go productive struggle, and then I saw what kept being there, and it ended up being like I have a win now team, but also 5 23 first. I have like Dobbins, I have Zeke, I have Tua Cousins. I had it was ridiculous. Like you can get this year, you can get so much old value if you want. If you're in a league where you can trade down, 23 firsts are so hard to trade for. So if you're in a league with a bunch of sharps, you're probably not going to be able to trade down and pick up 5 23 firsts like I did in that league. But if you can pick up some future picks and then draft some old guys, you can have your cake and eat it too. I think, especially every year. We keep getting so much, to me at least, Dynasty community as a whole keeps getting so much more ageist. So you can kind of trade down and then still try and win and pick up picks. I think especially after this year, because this year it's harder with 23s and everyone's talking up the 23s if you're on Twitter and kind of plugged in. But going forward, I don't think that'll be as hard. Like in 24, right? Like getting 24 picks, I don't think will be as hard. So that's another strategy I like is trying to trade down and still win with picks in your back pocket. But Scott, so one thing I'm going to throw this to Josh and Drew again, actually, before I get to Scott. I wanted to talk a little bit about, and I guess Justin might not be able to comment too much on this, but we have 3 sets of co-managers in the league. So I wanted to get in that a little bit because that's kind of interesting. Before me and Scott talk about that, I want Josh and Drew talk about that. So what's it like co-managing? I know Drew, I don't know if Josh does. I know Drew has quite a few teams, I think, just from talking to him where he's a co-manager. So maybe I'll let you go first, Drew, but just how do you handle co-managing? Does one of you take the lead? Do you run everything by each other? Kind of, it's definitely an interesting dynamic. It's been interesting with Scott too, because we do have definitely some divergent thoughts on something. Yeah.
Just a little.
So I'll let you start off, Drew.
Yeah, gosh, if I had to count, I'm probably at maybe 8 or 10 leagues that I co-manage at this point.
Oh wow, you're a pro.
Mostly because I just want to split the cost and have some fun, and a couple of folks that I've been doing this fantasy thing with for a while. So, but yeah, Josh and I actually have 2 teams that we're co-managing. One of them was an auction draft, one of the safe leagues. So that was our first experience together, and that was interesting.
Smart.
Going through values and then trying to figure out who's going to keep track of who's on the board and where do our nominations stand.
Doing an auction together.
But it was a lot of fun, and we're still catching a bunch of shit in our chat from people that are giving us a hard time about our team and stuff. We'll see. We'll see what happens this year. But for this one, I think Josh has I've seen him draft a couple of teams in leagues that we've been in together, and he's done a really good job. So I think I've tried to defer after watching my mistake in the first round. I probably deferred a little bit more, but yeah, I think at this point we just kind of throw a few names out at each other and see kind of where the overlap is, and then settle on what do we think is going to be there on the way back, and figure out which combo we'd rather have if it goes the way we think it's going to go. But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun too, because then you get to see what they're thinking and what catches their eye, and I think we're both looking at different types of players for value, so that's where some of our diversity and thought comes in. So Josh may say, here's the position I want to go after, and this is why, and I'll look at some value otherwise, and that's cool. Is there a way that we can get both of these if possible? If not, how do we kind of settle out what the priority is? So but yeah, I mean, Josh and I have been doing this thing for a while, and it's pretty relaxed, I'd say. I know some people get a little intense over it.
We won't name any names or any co-hosts who aren't here tonight, but how about yeah, I know, right? How about
they're
if
on
you
the
have
clock
a
and they
disagreement?
refuse to make the pick because
somebody's asleep, somebody's got to go on vacation during a startup, and
I get it. I offered them a trade. I'm like, hey, you guys haven't traded yet. This is the trade that just happened to drop down 10 picks and add a fourth, and they want to wait, so that's fine. Co-managing is not easy. Like I said, I did an auction startup with a co-manager, and I would say that when you're both bidding on players like independently, sometimes that can be problematic. You're like, hey, this is what I just did, or this is what I did like while you were sleeping, and I'm like, I wouldn't have probably done that, but okay, whatever.
So Josh, any thoughts on the whole co-managing thing?
Co-managing is fun. So actually, the first team I ever co-managed was last year in the Timeline League with Bill, and Bill and I are funny because we agree on like probably 95% of things, and where our most like are violent, and it's not the right word to use, but violent disagreements are on the most trivial players. I mean, we had a fight, and this had to be like the 18th round or something, and we were going between Taylor Heineke and Dwayne Haskins, who was probably at that point like QB5 for us, and he's like, it's definitely Dwayne Haskins. And I made this analogy to him. I go, Dwayne Haskins is like a scratch-off lottery ticket. If you win your money back, you're like happy with it. Like that's like really your best case scenario. Taylor Heineke's like a Powerball ticket. Like you're probably not going to win anything, but it could actually be pretty good for you. So I deferred in that situation. We went with Dwayne Haskins, who was, I think, a literal zero the whole year. And Taylor Heineke ends up starting most of the season for Washington. Then in the playoffs, we actually traded for the guy. I think we gave up a second for him. So I'm like, we could have had this guy for free. Now we're giving up picks to get him because we needed a quarterback at the time. But that was my first experience. But it Bill and I are funny because we will argue about the most trivial. Not anything important. Like the first 10 rounds, there was no argument. Like maybe we had a difference of opinion, but it was usually like, okay, like I see your point, or he saw my point, and we just went with it. But man, that Heineke versus Haskins debate, I wish that would have been on a podcast, because that A, would have put everyone to sleep, but B, it would have just been, it would have made everyone laugh. Drew's funny because Drew keeps beating himself up about, I wanted Russ, he wanted Mark Andrews, and I went with Andrews. And he's like, dude, we should have went with move. We should have went with Russ. We should have went with Russ. And I was like, we can still build a good team. It's only one pick. Like, it's the first round pick. Like, and I'm not even mad about Andrews. It's not like Andrews is not going to score us a ton of freaking points. But it's like, don't worry, we'll figure out, the quarterback thing. And we did. We have Brady and Tannehill, and that's not going to be the best 1-2 QB duo in this league, but it's not going to be bad. I mean, it's not like we're running, Baker and, Drew Lock out there. We're not totally handicapped at the position. So
Don't give away our next pick, Josh.
yeah, whoops. Don't take Drew Lock, guys. We're gonna take him. Promise.
We're a fan of crappy QBs, so
I mean, at this point, any QB you're taking. Jimmy Garoppolo just got taken. He was probably the last QB that I would consider to be good. Everyone else, you're just it's prayers and and yuck. That's pretty much what you got left. So
yeah, that's pretty much correct. Yes,
Mercer didn't even want to hear about the quarterbacks that are left. He walked away.
he just bailed out. Yeah, it's been real interesting doing the co-managing with Scott here. Scott's not always the quickest to respond to text, for one thing.
So, busy time, yeah.
Yeah,
we're both busy. You're out of town.
Yeah, that was the other thing. I spent the
so...
last 10 days in Florida. I just got back yesterday. Just as the startup was literally the day the startup was starting, I was flying out. So that was
like, perfect. I was not all the guys I want.
I was not responding quickly either. So it was kind of nice that we kind of bailed out of almost the entire first 2 rounds. So I didn't
it did work out perfectly.
But yeah, and I'm one who I like to make sure that I always run it by my co-manager before I do anything. I don't like to kind of just take the wheel. I actually did a couple times, but it was stuff that we'd already talked about. Like I think I drafted CEH, and we had talked about a couple guys in that spot.
Yeah,
things like that.
Kansas City backup. Oh, I'm sorry.
You mean third string? Dude, I literally went to try to dump my other share of him just because I don't want to have any shares, and I was like, great, now I have 2, so now I got to get rid of this other one. Son of a.
Well,
get a piece of the KC offense, but yeah, it's kind of there's a give and take. It was you guys talked to this was before the show or earlier on the show. You mentioned the Atlanta quarterbacks. That was a total Scott move, which was pointed out in the chat. He likes to grab quarterbacks. We had back-to-back picks. We took Mariota and Ritter as kind of our QB3 combined. And
I just figured to lock up that position, like, let's just give us that option right now. Like, they're either going to give us points or maybe we could trade them. Like, let's just have that. Because, I mean, who else are we drafting? Like, like you mentioned, like Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, like, so I was like, okay, this is our chance to either do this or not. And then Baker got traded. And then, so it was like, okay, we have both of these guys are on the board. So, we can just kind of lock up that position. Like, I don't like either of those guys.
Yeah,
but
I said to Scott, I'm like, I hate Ritter, but
me too. But at the same time,
hated on Ritter.
Atlanta is going to win like 4 games. So like when they're 2-9, I mean, who's going to be starting the last 6 games? You know what I mean? Like he's going to play probably. So we're going to find out, with both of those guys. But pretty much when you look at the rest of who's available, it's not just like you got to look at your roster and you go, okay, this is who we have, this is where we're at. But at the same time, you got to go, okay, are we drafting Van Jefferson or are we drafting, Desmond Ritter? Like Van Jefferson's not going to do a fucking thing for us. Like we don't, we're never going to start him. So it's like, why are you even, and not just specifically him, but like literally anybody in that tier, like all those guys are just, my philosophy is more like, I'd rather have like 9 quarterbacks that nobody likes, because at some point, if they end up being Taylor Heineke, right? Whereas we know most of these receivers are just, they don't just step into roles like that. Like it's just so rare and you're not going to know when is the time to start them. So, I mean, that's where more philosophy comes into it. Right. And so, You just kind of have to figure out what makes sense. I mean, because now we'll probably go through the next like handful of picks where I'll pretty much just I'll make my observations and then Rocky can make the picks. You know, like I'm not going to worry about it too much. Like I'll give my input, but like at the end of the day, like there's nobody at this point that I'm like, oh yeah, we have to get this guy.
Yeah.
You're not clamoring for Sam Howell. That's shocking.
In like 10 more rounds, I might be. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
He'll be
I
gone in
will,
10 more.
I will say that double tap of Ritter and Mariota was enabled by a trade you made with me.
Yeah,
That's right.
Just
We had
four back.
back-to-back picks,
Yeah.
which made me more
Yeah,
on board with
exactly.
the whole idea. It's like,
Exactly,
yeah, we can get both
yeah.
of them,
That's
And I like back-to-back picks for that reason, right?
Yeah.
You can do something that makes sense together, like tag team a starting quarterback duo where for this year you have Atlanta starting quarterback.
Right.
Mercer,
Right.
you
Like a
didn't put the
67%
air quotes
chance.
around starting quarterbacks in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weapons, offense, football team. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it.
In case you can't tell, Scott was doing air quotes there. If you couldn't tell verbally,
Well,
So
I
I got a
did.
question.
what
guys.
Scott was saying got me more on board with that too. Like I could certainly be. Maybe I'm wrong on Ritter, or maybe I'm not even wrong on Ritter. But he has 2 300-yard games in a row, and then maybe someone in the league becomes more interested in him, and we can sell him for something. So it made a lot of sense. Having 3 QBs in a 14 teamer is valuable in itself. So.
Yep.
Okay, one last thing before we kind of finish up here. I was just looking at some of the picks, and I don't know if any of you have any picks that you remember that stand out. One I was looking at to me is what do you guys think about like specific picks in the draft? Deshaun Watson went at 206. Way too high?
Yeah.
I mean, we
Everybody's
talked
got
about
that.
if we had
Look.
if we were gonna tank this year, that would have been the move.
Yep.
Yes. The
Yeah.
the rest of his roster depends. So what did he do with the rest of his team? That's gonna matter.
He is very young.
With his roster, I do like the pick actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he has
Same
Watson.
So
and
it makes
Mills.
sense now.
one
At the
receiver.
time, we were probably like, ooh, but now it's like, okay, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, he definitely went. Young players, future looking. He's not competing this year,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think that's the only team that you want Watson on, or ones that you're kind of rebuilding, not planning to compete at all, and it actually helps you for 0 points, right?
Exactly.
So.
I also feel I should mention Cooper Kupp 212, clearly a steal.
You're welcome.
Hey, he went 103 in a draft that
Oh my god!
like
Well,
a
that's
month
insane.
ago that I remember breaking down, and I mean that was to somebody like who's pretty well known and writes and does podcasting and all that. It's not like he's just some random Twitter guy or whatever. So and it was super flex. So no, it's hey
212 is a good value for him. The one pick I remember and I clearly regret at this point in the draft is I took, just because it was too much value. Like, it was great value, but I took Kamara at 612, and I really wish I would have taken the player that you guys drafted right after me in Cortland Sutton. I was like,
he was
with my wide receiver room, I was like,
yeah.
dang it, I should have went him. That's the one pick I regret. I love Kamara. Yes, there's the suspension out there looming, but I mean, I was like, man, with my wide receivers, my team would look much better with Sutton versus Kamara right now.
It's so funny you say that, because I was going to mention Kamara. I mean, 612 with the
That's
suspension,
late.
I guess it makes sense, but that was kind of crazy to me. I mean, it wasn't.
I couldn't pass. It was hard for me to pass him up. I realized after the fact it probably wasn't good for my build, but I just thought the value was too good.
Yeah, and I think this is going to happen in a lot of startups. I'm just looking at it. The running backs are just like going down the board so much in general. I was just looking like the timeline guys here, Drew and Josh, Mixon at 405, Nick Chubb at 605. That's kind of insane.
We appreciate all of you, everyone in the league. You get our appreciation. And honestly, I don't even like Joe Mixon, but I was like, dude, come on. Like, we got to stop this. Like,
That's right.
it gets
That's
to
right.
a point where even guys that you don't like, you're like, okay, now we've just gone way too far with the hate. And I mean, we love Jamar Chase, we love T. Higgins, we love Joe Burrow. I mean, Joe Mixon is on that same team. We should be showing him the same kind of love, and we don't. So, yeah, that
Got
was
some
one.
O-line help.
I
Why
know
not?
they finally got themselves maybe a good offensive line, which is kind of crazy to say for Cincinnati since I've been alive, I think. But yeah, that was a good one. And
Anthony Munoz. I mean, but he's just one man.
Yeah.
Well,
so,
he's just one
yeah,
man.
he's
He's
just one man.
just
Yeah.
one man.
Yeah.
But and then Chubb too. I love Nick Chubb, but after Joe Mixon, I did not expect to take another running back so soon. But
Mhm.
man, I mean, you leave Nick Chubb out there. I think that was like the 75th pick.
75, yeah.
Yep.
I'm like, that's crazy too. So my builds don't normally look like this with two running backs so early, but like I was saying earlier, the value was just there. I mean, obviously by pick 75, there was probably, 28 quarterbacks taken. So that obviously is going to help things out. And then, it was just, and I don't hate our wide receivers either. I thought I was going to hate our wide receivers after we got CeeDee Lamb, but I was like, okay, like I'm not mad at what we have at wide receiver either. So,
Which is Brandon Cooks, Robert Woods, and Russell Gage.
yeah. after
Yeah,
CeeDee.
I think the last one we were texting back and forth. We probably should have gone after our second and a half quarterback at that point instead of Gage, but we'll see where we shake out here.
Hey. We got the stack. We got the Brady Gage stack. He's
That's
wide
key.
receiver 2 on that offense until Godwin gets back, and we don't know how long that's going to be. I like that as wide receiver 4 on the team. Don't hate on Russell Gage.
It is funny how Rocky-like your quarterbacks are, Brady and Tannehill.
I mean, we had to go with the Rocky plan because we didn't get one in the first, and then by the time the second came, it was just like, all right, none of these guys are someone I want to take at pick 18. I mean, Rocky, the trade just looks better for you guys, that 102 trade, because Kirk Cousins is kind of standing there at the perfect spot to be taken, and you guys were in position. So it was, and we were actually trying to trade back, and we couldn't get a deal worked out with anyone because we were like, okay, this spot is like, I honestly didn't really like anyone at that spot. I was kind of like, oh, this is like a no man's land right now. And finally went with CeeDee Lamb because I think he's gonna jump into the top 5 this year.
Yeah.
But Jesse, I appreciate you, man. I was so pissed when the timeline grabbed CD. Sure, you were gonna go quarterback. I'm a value shopper. Find me the value. I don't like to buy over the sticker price if I can avoid it. So yeah, CD was there, and I'm sorry I broke up your stack. Actually, I'm not sorry I broke up your stack, but
We're not.
I'll just say that for appearances. But yeah, so that was this has been fun so far. I'm not gonna lie. The group me is just like everyone's just like
Very active.
patting it up and
Yeah, it's cool.
poking fun at each other. So it's been a good time.
Yeah, we ended up with a great group. Drew, I think you have to go here. So
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah,
Want to give your
fading.
Twitter handle or anything before you sign off? Or
Nah,
I'll do it at the end
Josh
for you.
talk.
Josh,
We'll give you updates.
Josh,
next
make
week.
sure you give Drew's Twitter handle.
I will.
Good to see you all. Have a good night.
Thanks, buddy. See ya.
And then the one other thing I was just looking at with some of I was a little surprised that there weren't more with the 2.0 premium. The tight end didn't go a little heavier. I'm looking, and we're only 4 taken in the first 45 picks, I believe, which surprises me a little bit. You guys,
I was shocked. I was shocked that Waller was there.
Yeah, you got him at the 411,
53rd overall.
Yeah. You said 2 out of the first, or you said 4 out of the first 45.
If I'm doing my math correct,
And
right?
that's after
the fifth one went at 404, so that's pick 46, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and 2 went in the first 10.
Yes.
So that's even crazier after kind of that start that it went dead for that period of time.
I think we just had so many QBs crammed in there.
That's
too,
part of it.
right?
Yeah, it was
And
dead
I mean,
18 of 27. So
that's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, we've become a quarterback crazy dynasty community in Superflex.
And it was
I remember
like
when I started in 2018, like heavy into like dynasty Twitter and online leagues and stuff. You would have first rounds with like 3-4 quarterbacks. Yeah. Now it's like if you get out of the first round with even in 12 team with like less than 9, it's a surprise.
And that's the crazy thing though, Rocky, that you're saying, because in 12 team, it's a little easier to fade the quarterback a little bit longer. I kind of get it a little bit more in a 14 team league because everyone is like, okay, there's a limited crop of these guys and we have to get them. But I mean, I think we even put that into overdrive for a 14 team league. So definitely like you were saying earlier, that changed the strategy real quick. I was like, oh, okay. It's Tom Brady season for literally a season.
And just to drive the running back point home, we mentioned earlier, I meant to mention this. Jesse and Andrew, who's also in the league, Andrew Imber, pointed out Dobbins went at 602 and Aaron Jones at 701. Just running backs. Nobody wants to draft running backs in Dynasty anymore. Maybe me and Scott went a little too early with picking the two we did, but I'm pretty happy with them.
Who do you guys have?
Brees and Javonte.
Javonte and Brees.
And Javonte. Yeah, Drew and I were a little heartbroken when Javonte was gone. Not that we were really expecting him to get back, but you always hold out your hopes. And
even though
it was a weird thing though, because I don't even take running back sometimes in startups. I'm in another startup. It's an auction, and I don't have a single running back on my roster, and I have like 24 players right now. So, and that's very typical for me. And then here we are taking 2 running backs like in our first 4 players, but it's kind of like now we can kind of go any direction with this. Like these guys are young and they're so valuable. We can definitely just trade them away if we're not what we think we're going to be. And, you know, if we are, these guys are going to help us win. So either way, we're good here.
And even those 2 went in the 3rd round. That was 302 and 303.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay, one last thing before we finish up the whole startup thing here. Bill, you know, Josh mentioned Bill earlier. I probably shouldn't do this with Justin here, but Bill wants me to make my hot sauce pick. I'm also in the hot sauce 14 team second copy startup right now.
Do it.
And
I am in the first copy of that league. That's why.
Yeah, so he's not actually in the
I won that league last year, the first year. So
awesome.
So
how good is your team right now? Because I know Larry's just making all kinds of crazy picks.
Well, that's Larry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, last night I made a big trade with my co-host on my podcast. I traded in because we can trade the first copy. Like
the first
trade
in to the second trade.
So it's really interesting. So I traded Eckler, and I got the 7-11 pick, which was on the clock, David Montgomery, and a 2024 second. And
you took?
And I traded it. I traded the 7-11, Ryan Tannehill, and 224 firsts for Lamar Jackson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I like that for him.
And I have Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase stack won me that league because they went off in the playoffs. So now I have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase stack, and Lamar Jackson. So,
beautiful. Nice work.
So we're not going to get a Junkies pick. We were hoping maybe me and Scott would come up or Josh's team would come up.
It's on Andrew and Bobby. So
so we're not, but we can get a hot sauce pick on the pod. So
all right, good enough.
Here's what I and this is the league I mentioned earlier. I'm not totally productive struggling, but I'm definitely going way younger than I do a lot of times. Here's my team. I have 3. You can draft 23 and 24 first in this startup. I have 3 23 firsts, including my own. So those were kind of expensive to get. Those were fairly early-ish picks. Quarterback, I have Tua. Running back, I have Dobbins and Javonte. I don't have any other quarterback besides Tua. Wide receiver, I have Waddle and Devontae Smith. And then tight end, I have Hawkinson. And that's where we're at.
Of course you do.
All right, so
Who's the best 21st on that's available right now?
See, I don't know. I haven't looked over the teams well enough to know which is the best 24 first. Like, I didn't prepare coming onto the pod.
Right.
I didn't know Bill was going to tell me to pick. So
yeah, so that 7-11 pick I had that Ruben used was the very first 24 first round pick that went, right? So he actually got 3 24 firsts and Ryan Tannehill for Lamar. So it was a good trade for him because he's kind of in the rebuild mode, and for me, I'm like still trying to compete and defend my ship. So I loved adding Lamar, but I think 24 first. I don't think you want a quarterback because I don't think there are any
best
left.
Quarterbacks on the board right now are basically Wentz, Ryan, Daniel Jones, and Davis Mills.
Not for that roster, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have any quarterbacks on your roster anyway, so.
Yeah.
Best running backs are probably Gibson, Jacobs, CH.
God, what is the deal?
But you have 2 already that, like, I wouldn't go more than.
Yeah,
I would go wide receiver.
You're gonna score too
or
many points, probably.
Yeah, I would go wide because you have Hawk as your tight end, and that tight end. I mean, it's a tight end premium because it's tiered PPR.
Yeah, it's 0.5, 1.0, 1.5, and then you get 0.75 per first round per tight ends.
Yeah, so it's tight ends are extra valuable. So tight end.
So Evan Ingram is the next pick. Got it. Okay.
Well, Freiermuth is on the board. He's probably the best tight end available.
That's
I'm a homer.
Nice.
I can't state an opinion.
Yeah, no, that's nice.
I'll state an opinion. That's nice.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you go Freiermuth or 24 first. Wide receiver, the best guys like on the board are probably older. The best young guys on the board are probably like Mooney, Bell, Sky Moore, Christian Watson.
Take 24 first overall.
Yeah, overall those guys. I agree with Scott.
So Freiermuth or 24 first.
I'd go Freiermuth because tight ends that are involved in the offense are hard to come by.
It is a pretty hefty premium, like I said. It's 0.5, 1.0, 1.5.
And then the rookie quarterback, what's their safety blanket, right? Rookie quarterback, he's young. They're going to grow up together, essentially. I don't know.
And Deontay's probably moving on, and all that. So
but will still be awesome.
The only thing is, though, and Scott referenced it earlier, is how many points are you going to score? Because if your whole gig is tanking, or not tanking, productive struggle.
And I realize this isn't a total productive struggle. Like, I don't mind. I don't care about. Like, I want good players. Like, in addition to my 23 first, even if they score points, I'll live with that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you can turn a 24 first into, what if Schultz signs an extension and then he gets hurt? Then that team, you can trade a 24 first for him or something like that. You know what I mean? Or not, pick whoever you like. I like Schultz. Whatever. But
I mean, I think you could get Pat Freiermuth with a 24 first if you need him, if you're going out.
Right, that's what I mean is you could still maybe get him for that. So maybe the first gives you more roster flexibility.
So you're saying, okay, so take the 20. I'll have to wait till after the pod and kind of judge who I think has the best possible 24 first, which is probably one of the win now teams that's super old right now. So, yeah. So that I don't want to make that on the pod, but Bill, I will be taking a 24 first as soon as this pod is over. So, so we will move on to Find Me a Trade, which
and I'm gonna before we do that, I'll bow out now.
Okay,
and
you did not find a trade.
I didn't find a trade for this, but thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. For those that listened, I am at C2C Dynasty Merce. I am a co-host on the C2C Coast to Coast Dynasty podcast with Ruben Almada at Superflex DGen, and really appreciate you starting up this listener league too. It's been a lot of fun.
I'll
definitely
say
has.
too, Ruben is like the guy who always responds first to me in the Dynasty and Chill like Patreon. We're all in there and we chat all the time, and Ruben is like all over it. So definitely rooting for you guys. Like I said, I chat with Ruben probably more than anybody in there. So yeah, you guys are great, man. So I'm definitely rooting for you.
Yep. Thank you very much. Take care, guys.
See you.
See you, buddy. Thanks for being here.
Which, by the way, Ruben in the chat saying, then why draft 2 in response to me saying I wanted good players,
Yeah.
which I'm sure Scott agrees with.
Yeah.
So
And
do I,
actually,
by the way.
Josh agrees
So
with.
do
yeah.
I. I mean, I agree with Ruben here.
Well,
Why?
because are you
Me and
saying
Russ
you'd
are still
you'd
2 in
flip him?
leagues.
Like you'd flip him if he ends up like hitting, or was it more about like I'm stacking him with Waddle, or what was like why did you take him?
Yeah, I think it was more about, and I believe in Tua more than you guys do. I still think there's going to be a value increase this year. I think he is going to play well with the weapons he has with Mike McDaniel.
I mean, because if he doesn't, he's basically toast.
Yep.
Yes, but if he does,
and then what?
There's a value increase, and I can either sell him or I have a solid quarterback.
All right.
Solid young quarterback. Anyway.
Gotcha.
Enough Tua slander.
Never enough.
To a truth. It's not even slander at this point. It's just facts.
It's gonna be so sad when he scores Lions by like 100 points, Josh. I feel bad for you. But,
even with the advanced weapons that he has over Trevor Lawrence, that ain't happening.
We shall see. Anyway, find me a trade. Scott, do you have up the settings while I pull up the roster here, and then I'll share it on the screen? Okay.
All right. So this one was submitted by our very own Jesse Schott. So thanks, homie, for submitting that. And 12-team PPR, 1 quarterback, no tight end premium. But in 2023, so starting next season, it is converting to a super flex and 1.5 tight end premium. 25-man roster that's currently expanded to 29 for the non-point scoring season, and it is a start 9 currently. And when it goes to super flex, a flex changes to the super flex, so they're not adding a starter. It's not going to become a start 10. So it's a shallow roster and a shallow start as well.
Yes.
So we want to keep that in mind.
Okay, so let me pull up his roster on the screen.
Typically, in my experience, what I've seen is these leagues that convert, like you can't convert a 1 quarterback to a super flex. Like, yeah, sure, you can do anything you want, but should you? No, you should not. They're completely different leagues. Your startup would not be anywhere. There would be no pick the same. It makes no sense. If you guys want to do super flex, just start a super flex league or just redraft the whole damn thing. It literally makes no sense. I'm guessing there's somebody in this league who's experienced, who's like, we should really be doing super flex. Why are we doing 1 quarterback? Oh, and by the way, it should also be tight end premium. So let's just convert it. And everyone is like, kind of like, okay, sure, whatever. You know what I mean? Like there's probably a lot of inexperienced people in here, because if it was me, I'd be like, all right, see ya. I'll just go. If I'm doing a super flex league, I don't want to be handicapped with my 1 quarterback roster, because it's a totally different build than I would have. So you got to kind of maybe factor that into the mindset of it, in my opinion.
Okay, and he has on his roster, he's already started. He mentioned in his write-up, which we'll get to in a minute, that he was already loading up for the super flex changeover. So he has a bunch of quarterbacks on his roster. He's got Watson, he's got Tua, he's got Kenny Pickett, he's got Herbert, he's got Darnold, he's got Kyle Trask, Mitchell Trubisky, Jordan Love, all kinds of quarterbacks. So he's fine there. At running back, he's very kind of lean. Derek Gore, Aaron Jones, Damian Pierce. That's it.
Good job.
And then at receiver, he's got very little. He's got Allen Robinson, Devontae Parker, Jamison Crowder, Marvin Jones, Zay Jones, and The other guys are even worse than that. So Alec Pierce, rookie, so maybe he's something. Calvin Austin, Wandale Robinson, and then a tight end. Again, mostly rookies and scraps. Kate Otten, Trey McBride, Isaiah Likely, Dulcich, Evan Ingram, Foster Moreau, Harrison Bryant. So those are that's his roster. He did say that he just jumped in the league this year, had a dispersal draft with one other new team, decided to do a full-on rebuild with the hope of a 24 title. You mentioned the league is switching on the premium and the super flex, and then he's hoarding the quarterbacks. Tried to sell Aaron Jones, but no one was really interested in him for the price that he wanted, and figured he would sell him when he gets some solid preseason hype. Allen Robinson, another guy I figured I would move when he gets a little more hyper after a big game. So, Josh, why don't you get into yours first?
Oh, all right, let's do this. So, first of all, he mentioned he made a trade for Deshaun Watson, and it was Kirk Cousins and a 23 first. And I just said that was a ballsy trade. Not going to sit here and say it was wrong or it's right, because let's face it, we're not going to know that until 2023 and beyond, probably. But
that trade was Cousins in a 23 first, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. You don't want Kirk Cousins on a team that you're rebuilding, but I just Watson can be had for so much less, and that like I said, I'm a value shopper. It pains me. And then Aaron Jones, he said he was struggling to trade Aaron Jones away because, Aaron Jones, I feel like, is going to be an in-season trade guy. Listen, at some point, he's going to have like a 4-touchdown game. It happens every year. That's when you make the trade. That's when you find the contender, the guy who thinks he's going to win the whole thing, and you get those pieces. It's not going to happen right now because, the narrative is he's old, A.J. Dillon's there, and he can't possibly be good with those two things working against him. I think as the season goes on, people always pay to win, and that's when you make the sale. But now to my trade. Funny that we were just talking about that Miami Dolphin quarterback, because he's actually a part of my trade that was not planned. It's just the way it worked out. So this was tough because Bing Pot he did it right in the dispersal. He didn't take a bunch of running backs, and he got a bunch of quarterbacks. And I think at this point, let's get rid of one of the 4 starters that he's going to have. And he could possibly have more because I think Trubisky will be starting most of the season for the Steelers. But trading Tua, getting yourself Deontay Johnson and Kenny Gainwell. Yeah. Scott, you mentioned it before. It doesn't look like the Steelers are going to have him back after this season, but he's good. And no matter where he goes, he's going to be good. He's going to be good this year.
Yeah.
Even whether it's Trubisky, whether it's Kenny Pickett, he's going to be good. And if he goes somewhere else, if he takes the Juju path and goes to Kansas City next year, he's going to be good. If he goes down to Jacksonville, because that team has no options, he's going to be good.
Oh yeah.
There's not a team that he can go to where I go, oh, he's not.
Well, there's one in the Midwest.
Which one?
There's a logo. It's just this orange C. And
listen, Justin Fields would do backflips if he could get Deontay
he would
Johnson.
be very thrilled to have Deontay Johnson. Yes,
he would be great there.
Yes.
So get him now because and this is actually a perfect time to buy him. We just found out that the Steelers probably aren't going to have him back. They don't want to pay the $20+ million that Deontay is asking for, and maybe not should get. But I mean, I think he's in that zip code. So people are going to be worried. Oh, what can he do outside of the Steelers system? Oh my goodness! And we tend to forget that Ben Roethlisberger was a shell of the player that he used to be. And then Kenny Gainwell is just a guy I like to get thrown in trades because the Eagles I still think even with the addition of AJ Brown are still going to lean towards the run because let's face it, that's when they started running. And that's not to say that it's just going to be running backs because we all know by now Jalen Hurts can run the ball a little bit. So I want a piece of that. You know, it's your Miles Sanders insurance. You know, it's your Boston Scott insurance or whoever the second guy is going to be. Kind of insures a couple different positions there. So, and no one cares about him. No one's going to be like, I'm not going to do this trade because Kenny Gainwell's involved. So it's a nice little piece to get added on top. And unlike Rocky, I am not sold on this magical value increase that is going to happen between now and next year. So let me get him now. Let me trade him away now while the hype is high. Oh, he's got Tyreek Hill. He's got Jalen Waddle. Mike Gesicki, got signed to a tag. Oh, everything's great. Tua's just going to be, a monster. I forget who says it. It might be Bobby, but, you surround an average quarterback with great weapons. That guy's still an average quarterback, and Tua at best is average. So get rid of him while he has some hype. Get a guy that has a little less hype, but actually has proven himself in the league, and then get a throw-in. That's my trade. But this was a tough one, man. This is maybe one of the toughest find-me trades I've ever done.
Yeah, this was a tough one. Like, especially he mentioned that Aaron Jones was he had trouble selling him, so I didn't really want to move Aaron Jones either because he had trouble already moving him. So I don't hate this trade. It helps that you put Deontay on the other side as a Deontay truther that I am. So
am I.
Yeah. I do like Tua though, but like I said, he has so many quarterbacks. I don't hate moving off one of the quarterbacks to try and get something else. I do wonder if maybe you could get a little more than Gainwell on top of Deontay. That would be the only thing for me.
Yeah, and honestly, I kind of value Deontay over Tua anyway, but I know that 5% of the community is probably going to feel that way. So I said, Let's not get greedy. Let's just throw a Kenny Gainwell on there because no one's going to care. I was hoping for a second, actually, but I don't think that team has any seconds.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what was the problem for me. But
I will say, too, I've been in one or two leagues where it's gone from one QB to Superflex, like over a year or two span. And I do feel that people still don't fully value the quarterbacks until it actually hits that super flex year, which this isn't this year, it's next year.
Exactly.
So it might be hard to get much more than this for Tua anyway, especially since he doesn't need to start two QBs or even feel the compulsion to start two QBs this year because they're only starting one. So, I mean, not that you need to start two QBs in super flex, but we all prefer to. So,
plus Bing Pot has 3 first rounders.
Yes.
So if he's in a situation where, he needs to get another quarterback for some reason, he definitely has the draft capital to do so.
Yeah, and he probably doesn't even need to, as we talked about.
No.
He's got if he trades Tua, he still has Herbert. Again, in 23, he should have Watson plus Pickett. And that's 3 guys right there. Most of the other guys on this roster are probably 1-year guys that he probably should also be selling if he can. But like Trubisky and Jordan Love isn't a starter yet, but if he ever gets a chance to.
Well, he can trade Trubisky like 8 games into the season when the Steelers are doing well, and he's been running that show for 8 games. That's when you trade him.
Yeah, and I guess I'll get into my trade then. Unless, Scott, you had anything you wanted to chime in on that one?
No, because I'll kind of circle back. So
okay,
you go ahead. Yeah.
Mine real quick. When I looked in this roster, Aaron Jones and Allen Robinson were the 2 clear guys you want to move off of to me.
Yeah.
He mentioned having a hard time moving Aaron Jones. He did mention that Robinson might be better to move in season, and I don't necessarily disagree with him. But I also put a trade in here to try and move Robinson, since you're sending us to find me a trade now, so we got to find a trade now, Jesse. So, but you could try this maybe more closer to the season. I put again also to that winner. I don't know. Is that winner squared? Winner times 2. I don't know what that's supposed to be.
Winner to the second
up-pointing arrow.
power. Winner,
Yeah.
winner.
Chicken dinner. I don't know. But Allen Robinson to that team. Allen Robinson plus for Christian Watson. I put this in a calculator. I put it in DLF and DTC, and Allen Robinson actually comes out higher than Christian Watson in both, which surprised me. I don't see anybody trading Robinson for trading a first for Robinson, and Christian Watson was essentially a late first.
Where does the 110 go in there?
I didn't pull that up. I didn't pull up just the 110.
That's his ADP.
Yeah,
so
that's basically
way higher
that's
than
how I'm going in
Robinson,
most drafts.
but
It's
yet,
like,
that makes
109
no
to
sense.
120. It made no
That's
sense.
where I'm
Josh,
at.
exactly what you're talking about. Putting a name to a pick changes everything.
Right.
Yes.
Because, I mean, right now, if we talk this through just for a quick second, if we were going to do a rookie draft tomorrow and I had Allen Robinson on my team and either one of you had the 110, and I go, hey, Allen Robinson for the 110, you're both going to laugh at me. You're going to be like, come on, you know better. And then you're gonna hit reject. That's not decline. It's never gonna happen. So it's weird to me that on these calculators, all of a sudden, now that it's Christian Watson, it's like, oh well, Allen Robinson is definitely, that's weird to me. But go ahead, Rocky. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, no, I was just gonna say, and so yeah, I put Allen Robinson plus. I didn't have a defined plus. He has 2/3. You could try that. He has Devontae Parker. Maybe you could throw him in there. I would even be willing to go as high as like Dameon Pierce he has on his roster. I don't know if that would seem a little too much. Allen Robinson, Dameon Pierce. I'm pretty high on Watson. I liked his film a lot. And I just I think Watson is a guy too that would fit kind of this rebuild where I could see him not having a great rookie year, but having a good career. Rodgers and rookies don't necessarily mix too well. So even if he's a good player, he might not, ball out his rookie year. And I kind of like the idea of trying to get some players on your roster now. If you're going to move one Robinson or Jones, instead of just adding more and more picks to kind of build towards that 23 draft and 24 draft. So again, I didn't define the plus. You can maybe work that out with the guy, and this guy has he's got some receivers, but he has Godwin on his team. He's got Tyreek and Deontay Johnson, and not much beyond that. Like I said, he has Godwin, but he may not play the first month or two of the season, and this guy appears to be a contender. So I thought it might make some sense. I think he does have Amon-Ra, so it depends on what he thinks of him. But I definitely think Allen Robinson would be kind of a solid piece for him to have there as he goes for a title there. So what do you think? How bad is that one, Scott?
I mean, well, yeah, you're accomplishing what you want to accomplish for right now. So, I mean, I'm going to kind of encompass both of your trades with what I'm going to say here, because we'll come back around to what you said here first, Rocky, but ultimately it's like this time of year right now. So like trade fatigue can be a factor, because if you guys had a couple of dispersal teams, you're kind of, you're making this transition with the league. And so there's probably a lot of activity. And so there could just be some fatigue right now. But also it's like the time of year where you want to take advantage of news and stuff like that. But I mean, for me, like, I don't care about any of that stuff. And a lot of my rosters are kind of, they're where I want them to be. So I'm not really doing anything. Like, there might be some value, but like, I'm not trading for an Aaron Jones right now because I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 months, right? And that just gets us barely into the start of the season. So I may be looking 3-4 months out. So even as a competitor or as like the main contender of the league, I'm still probably not trading for those guys unless it's such a great value that I can't pass it up. So just looking at it from the other side, being like, well, why wouldn't these guys? There are plenty of rosters in this league that could use an Aaron Jones or an Allen Robinson, but it doesn't necessarily make sense for them to trade for him right now because it's July. And I know we always say, right, trade for value. And in the off season, get that value. Don't worry about the rosters, right? So, draft for need, trade for value, but then in the off season, we're also trading for value. We're not worrying about, which running back or wide receiver we have until we get into the season and figure out where things are at. So I like his overall roster construction and the way he attacked this dispersal. And so what I would say is just watch for these opportunities, like the surprise cuts. Think about like a Leonard Fournette, something like that. Things like that happen where now all of a sudden a guy has uncertainty, needs a running back, injuries, trades, any one of these other things that can impact the other teams, and where you're going to be able to move one of those players. So just be vigilant, just wait and be there to take advantage when the time is right. And then also I would say that there's a lot of non-essential wide receivers on the roster. So because of the way you built it, I understand why you have them, but I think there's a lot of guys that are ultimately not going to do anything for you. So you could use them as like fillers of youth pieces, like an Alec Pierce. It's like, okay, I like Alec Pierce as much as anyone, but like, is it going to prevent me from trading away like Aaron Jones if the guy's like, well, I'll take Aaron Jones, but I kind of feel like I need another piece with it that like isn't going to be out of the NFL in 2 years. So that's a good example of a player you can use to package. And then, coming back full circle all the way, Rocky said, well, you submit this right now because you're trying to figure out a trade right now. So I still wanted to give you something that makes sense. So I think your targets right now should be for the 24 first. You already have multiple 23 first. Everybody's on the 23 first. The guys that haven't given them up by now probably aren't going to give them up until maybe trade deadline. But in this league, whether you have one or not, because you're transitioning to that super flex, these guys probably aren't giving up the 23 first. So let's go after the 24 first. So my recommendation was Aaron Jones and Allen Robinson to the team scrubs for Spiller, Kirk, and a 24 first. And so nothing exciting or sexy about that. And I will mention this team has Eckler, so he may not want to give up Spiller. But I just feel like it gives you pieces that may or may not do anything right now, but can give you some short-term value spike to trade and or long-term value. And then you get the 24 first, which is ultimately the goal there. So, by the time 24 first rolls around, I don't think we're going to be talking about Aaron Jones at all, other than, maybe he's Rex Burkhead by that point. So you got to kind of shift your focus onto, even though it maybe seems too far out, that 24 first gives you roster flexibility that you can use at any point, or you'll just use it when it gets there, right?
So, Josh, any thoughts on that one?
I mean, honestly, I think I like this trade the most out of all three of the trades that we all gave in. I think it works because, like Scott said, you look at it and you go, oh, like, I'm not giving up anything crazy. And if I'm a contender, all right, Aaron Jones, he's going to be good this year because we're trying to make Alan Lazard a thing. We know that Sammy Watkins is going to have 50 points in week 1, and after that, he's going to have 5 points for the rest of the season. Bob Tonyan had his 15 minutes of fame 2 years ago. Christian Watson, Rocky, you mentioned Aaron Rodgers and rookies don't get along. Are we putting this on the back of Amari Rodgers? Doubtful. So Aaron Rodgers is probably gonna catch a lot of passes. And if you're looking at it like that and you're a contender, all right, dude, like this guy could, what is he? My RB2? Maybe he's even a flex. I'm not sure what that other team looks like because I didn't look at them when I was making a trade. But Aaron Jones in that position, that's great.
Oh, yeah.
RB2, flex, awesome. Give me that. And then you get Allen Robinson, and we're all kind of like, we saw what they did with OBJ last year once he came from Cleveland and he looked washed and he looked like he couldn't play ball anymore. Sean McVay has a way of just kind of cleansing you of all your sins and making you into the player that you used to be. So we have a lot of hope for him. So that's probably, again, to a contender, it's going to look nice. And then you get Isaiah Spiller, who I I have slowly started to become much higher on him.
Me too.
Not that he's taken Eckler's spot or anything like that, but I think he's going to spell Eckler a lot more than
They want him to anyway.
The Josh Jacksons and the grossness that they had. I mean, you couldn't take Eckler off the field because what you were putting on was disgusting. And then you get, I'm assuming you're talking about Christian Kirk here, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. The number one weapon for Trevor Lawrence. Let's go. Giddy up. He was better last year as the third option for Arizona than anyone that Jacksonville had last year. And that's actually statistical. That's not even just me spouting off at the mouth like I usually do. And then a 24 first. And man,
that's the main prize.
People are not putting enough respect on 24 first. And then we're going to see that switch flip like 3 weeks into the 23 season. All of the Devy guys are really going to be out in force, and you're going to hear blah, 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 24 class. They got this guy and they got that guy, and I'm not a Devy guy, so that's why I'm saying this guy and that guy, because I honestly don't know who these guys are going to be. And then we're going to be like, oh, crap, 24 first. Because Scott was dead on. You can't get a 23 first unless you're willing to chop off an arm. So I love this trade. I think it helps them out at multiple positions. It keeps them young, and it gives them additional ammo going into 2024.
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much summed it up. I think the value is pretty solid here. I think Aaron Jones for a 24 first makes sense. I think Spiller and Kirk for A-Rob makes sense. So, yeah, I don't really have much to add. I like this trade too. I agree with you. I think it's probably better than both of ours, Josh. So,
yep.
Yep. And Scott was ripping on his own trade before the show. I think he was wrong here.
Well, it's not my best work, but
it's not. It's certainly not sexy.
For all,
yeah.
It's not sexy. Like it's not fun, but it's if you want to win. I mean, sometimes you just got to, it's the little things.
It's good.
I also think Spiller is a nice running back to get in a rebuild because he's probably not going to score a ton of points this year, but he's got potential to score points in the future.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that makes sense too. But so that'll finish up our Find Me a Trade, which means we're at the end of our show as at our usual 90 or so minute point here. So Josh, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to give you a chance to plug your stuff and make sure you give Drew's Twitter handle before we sign off here.
I will. No, thank you guys for having us on. I'll speak for Drew on this point. I don't normally, but appreciate you guys. Obviously, love what all you guys do. Rocky, Scott, Andrew, even Bobby. We butt heads, but even Bobby. Kind of wish he was in the States so that we could get his Wan'Dale Robinson reaction. He loves them, so I wish we could see his reaction. But no, appreciate you guys. Love what you guys do. Drew and I, we're the fantasy timeline boys. You can see us right here where you're watching Junkies right now. Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. I'm at Real Fantasy TL, but honestly, what you should do is follow Drew at DR_PRA.
Not a doctor.
Just DM him and be like, hey, I need some medical advice. He loves that. But no, he is way smarter half of this combo. And he keeps everything on the tracks when I get a little out of hand. So definitely follow him. Follow me if you want to. That's fine, whatever. And then follow at Fantasy Timeline. We usually put out when the show's coming on, we retweet a lot of cool stuff like, hey, when the Junkies are on. And it's a good time for that stuff. So again, thank you guys. Really appreciate y'all and hope to be back on soon.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. Let me just finish up with some of our business here. You can follow me at Dynasty FF Addict. Follow Scott at Scott_Sidlow. The pod's at Dynasty Junkies. make sure you're following the DAP Network at DAP_network on Twitter, but also on YouTube. Like Josh said, you can see when we go live. You can see when Timeline goes live. Occasionally, Trade Addicts will go live. You can get all that stuff if you're following DAP Network on YouTube. There's also, make sure you're following Bobby, who Josh mentioned, Bobby Koch at Wrecked Fantasy, and Andrew at Andrew Hall FF. And also subscribe. Give us a subscribe if you're not already. If you just happen to stumble upon this podcast, please subscribe if you like what you've heard. Please, even if you don't like what you heard, give us a review. Let us know what you think. If we suck, tell us why, and we'll try and improve.
And blame Andrew or Bobby.
Yes, because they're not on tonight. But only if you do like us, give us a rating, preferably 5 stars. So I think that's everything. I'm going to sign off now. So Scott, take us out.
Yep, of course. Thank you to the Timeline guys for being here. You guys are the best. We love being on your show. We love when you're on ours. Thank you especially to Mercer, and we'll even thank Ruben for letting Mercer stay on longer with us. So that was awesome. And thank you to Jesse for jumping in and being on here, and also for submitting that awesome Find Me a Trade. And man, hey, thanks to everybody in the chat and who's watching tonight. A lot of people in here, a lot of activity. It's good stuff. We love the interaction. So yeah, thank you guys. Keep those FMATs coming in. And with that, for Josh, for Rocky, I'm Scott. Junkies out.